Okay. Hi, Darcy. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Douglas?
Doing just fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You're a documentary filmmaker, yeah?
That's true. I am. I've made about 7 films now.
Okay. Are you from Canada?
I am. I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in Toronto, Ontario,
Okay.
and I headed out to the West Coast. And when I was on the West Side, I connected up in LA and started working on films when I was living in Vancouver. And actually, the first documentary that I got published by a company in LA was a Sasquatch documentary.
Okay. The one thing I do apologize about is that normally I try to watch the guest's film. Clint was nice enough to send me the screener for your Sasquatch movie, but this week has been rather crazy, so I just hadn't have time to watch the film yet, so I do apologize.
No problem.
So this is a documentary on Sasquatch, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a documentary on a bunch of things related to Sasquatch, but it's called Sasquatch Among Wild Men because of the connection that Sasquatch has with relic hominids. So we're a hominid, Homo sapiens, and a relic hominid would be something like Neanderthal, Australopithecus, Gigantopithecus, and so on and so forth. There's lots of sort of monkey men or ape-like men that have existed in time. We have lots of fossil remains, and we're trying to basically make an argument that Sasquatch might be related to some of those things, but also we've done a analysis of some of the relic hominid sightings that people have had internationally, and there's such a thing as a Yeren, for example, in China. That name Yeren in Chinese directly translates to wild man, and basically sightings have been in their history in forested and mountainous areas like the Shenanjia National Rainforest of people coming across wild men that look very much like Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And further to that, I guess we're trying to say that there could be a species that once once lived on the planet in greater numbers across North America and Asia and Russia, Europe. But as we proliferated, Homo sapiens, we've pushed these things more and more into deeper wilderness. And yeah, I believe that possibly Sasquatch or Bigfoot, which would be the same species, by all accounts, they seem to be described the same across North America. Um, there's proof that they still exist in the wilderness.
The one you're referring to in China, is that also called the Yeti? Is that the one?
The Yeti would be something that is described as being seen in Russia, or most famously, we hear of the Himalayan Yeti.
Okay.
But we actually take a look at Yeti reports, or we do an analysis of the official Yeti that came out of the Himalayas. And that apparently has more of a gorilla um, look to it. It's a shorter being when it's on its hind legs, and it seems to have more of a hand-like foot, like I guess you would describe its foot to be that of like a gorilla's. It has a divergent big toe, kind of like a thumb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then there's the abominable snowman is the other one that I remember.
Yep. So that would be the abominable snowman is basically a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. That would have been people's sightings back in the 1950s and 60s of something like a Bigfoot or Sasquatch in Sierra, sort of snow-covered mountainous areas.
He had
Um,
white fur, right?
yeah, I mean that's probably the look that people illustrated him as in that claymation Christmas story. But when you can look at serious news clips or reports that have happened in history of an abominable snowman, it was always something with dark brown or black fur.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is that famous, I think, Super 8 or 16 millimeter film of the Bigfoot that's been out for years and years. I think it was filmed in the 60s. I remember it as a kid.
Yep.
Has that ever been proven or discredited at all?
Well, a lot of things have happened with that footage. To a lot of people that follow this study of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, that's pretty much the smoking gun. That's the proof. Because here's the thing that was filmed in 1967, and I actually feature that film, that old 8 millimeter film, in my first documentary that I was telling you about before, that I published back in 2016, and that's called The Unwanted Sasquatch. This new documentary that I've made, Sasquatch Among Wildmen, we're kind of talking about international sightings and the relation to Sasquatch or Bigfoot. So it's a bit of that storyline is evolved in our story, so to speak, in our new film, so to speak. But if you look at that original footage, in the first film I did, we blew it up. We zoomed in, we slowed it down, we went frame by frame, and I had to contact the the Patterson family. That film was recorded in 1967 by Roger Patterson. And basically, if we look at advanced sort of prosthetics and costumes and makeup and all that type of thing in terms of Hollywood, we really didn't see Chewbacca until 1976, right? So
Right.
10 years earlier, there's this video of what looks like a creature, an ape-like creature that's walking on this dry creek bed. And Roger Patterson was riding a horse when he recorded that. He jumped off the horse. The footage that you see, he's actually running to sort of catch up and see the creature. He was with Bob Gimlin. Bob Gimlin was still on his horse, kind of tracking along. And this creature apparently was ducked down, kind of trying to stay still when they came around this bend where this little creek was, and it looked like it was going to have water. And by the time the horses got startled, this thing said, "Okay, I'm out of here," and it stood up and started walking away. And that's when the men were alerted to it by the horses being startled. And right away, Roger Patterson jumped off his horse, and that film commences. If you watch that film, there's a few things that you can see in it. You can see signs of muscle working. You can see skin moving as the muscle is moving. The thighs of the creature are flexing as it takes steps, and it actually has breasts. This is a female creature. It has very sort of voluptuous breasts when you look at the close-up of this film. And just everything to do with how it moves. It seems to have a different locomotion and stepping pattern than a human does. There have been people that have come forward to try and disprove that. Um, his name is escaping me, but Bob Hieronymus came forward and he said, I was the guy in the suit. Now, the problem with his claim is that he's about 5'6", 5'8", or something like that. And when National Geographic did a study of that film, they used photogeometry. So they went to the site of where that was filmed. They stood where Roger Patterson had been moving on the other side of this dry creek bed. And then they had somebody walk along the same area that this creature was, and it was quite far away. Um, Basically, the way that they did the math was the distance from the lens to where the creature was to where downed trees were in the landscape at the time, and trees in the background that were still there at the time that they did this analysis and the time that the original film was recorded. Bob Hieronymus could have never been the guy in the suit, just based on his height and what this this creature's height supposedly was based on the photo geometry. It was walking with the stooped walking posture, and even with its stooped walking posture, it was around 7 feet
Wow.
6 inches. Yeah, so it was a
Okay.
very tall thing. And if people say if it stood upright, stretched out its spine, it probably stood around 8 feet. And we constantly hear through history of reports across North America, and even in my documentary, my latest documentary, Sasquatch Among Wildmen, the Yeren supposedly stands 8 feet tall, and the Dev stands anywhere between 8 to 10 feet tall. So, yeah,
Are those
that's
guys still alive?
which guys?
The guys that made the film.
No, they're both actually. Bob Gimlin might seem mirrored to
Oh
you
yeah. Okay.
backwards here, but he signed a little poster for me when I met him in person. He's still alive, yeah,
Okay.
and he was basically not the guy recording, but he was the guy with Roger Patterson, and the reason why they were in Northern California when the original film was recorded was purely to try and find pictures and video, or not video, film at the time of these elusive creatures, because there had been fresh reports all over that area that people were seeing. And it's a native reserve land. It's indigenous peoples of North America's area. Yeah. And many of those reports even come from them sometimes.
Do you have an idea or an estimate of how many actual reports there have been?
Thousands,
Thousands.
thousands,
Yeah.
thousands. I mean,
And who do
you
people normally report to? The police?
that is actually one of the first places that these reports come in, believe it or not. If you, for example, if you have a computer in front of you, if you want, you can go to BFRO, or you can go on Google and just type in BFRO, which stands for Bigfoot Field Research Organization. And for example, in Nevada, which is the state that you're in 1984, there was a sighting reported by two frightened hikers in Douglas County near Genoa. In 2004, October 2004, in Esmeralda County, there was a daylight sighting by a Reno police officer and two friends on Boundary Peak Mountain. And then February 2005, Humboldt County, hikers spotted a dark figure walking on a snowy mountainside in Winnemucca. So, it happens in every state, and there's kind of hot spots where these sightings are reported. Northern California, which is where the Patterson-Gimlin film was shot, Washington State, Oregon, even places like northern Idaho, Nevada, even British Columbia, which is a northwestern province of Canada. There's been sightings there that have been reported by civilians, police officers, even native indigenous tribes who have, in the lore of their oral tradition that they've passed on for thousands of years from person to person, they have the Sasquatch, which the word Sasquatch, the name, comes from a native tribe called the Stahelis in British Columbia, and they call it the Sasquatch. So, yeah, it's inside of they have the creature in their totem pole. They have a traditional dance they do for the creature, and it's been handed down from generation to generation, the story of the Sasquatch, telling children, be careful when you go in the woods, don't go in alone, that type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Darcy, we do got to wrap this up. Your film is called Sasquatch or the Wildmen. It's a documentary on, is it on all of them? The Bigfoot and the Abominable and the Yeti?
Yeah,
and all that?
we cover all of the international names for this. Well, we cover a good group of them, but, the names go on forever depending on what culture you come from. And if you want to see the documentary, it's on Amazon Prime. We have it on DVD, iTunes, Google Play, and then it's on cable television, Dish Network, Verizon, Fios, and a whole bunch of other Cox, in-demand services or on-demand services.
Great. Last question, and then we have to wrap it up. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Sure. If you want to see some of my older work, you can check out occultjourneys.com. I'm also available on Facebook as Darcy Weir, same name, and Instagram. And yeah, if anybody has stories they want to share about Bigfoot or Sasquatch, I'm always looking at things as they come in and planning to make another documentary on the subject, actually.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for coming on the show. This was very interesting. I'm always interested in these kind of things, especially
Thanks.
that one. That film was like the Zapruder film of Sasquatch, that everybody has seen. So I've always wanted to ask somebody who's kind of explored that film.